All right. Hello, everyone. I'm not going to be here for long. I wanted to say hello. I am Peggy Samsey. I'm the president of the New York Book Forum. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it. We also would like to thank our host, Macmillan, for giving us the space to have a conversation. I'm going to turn this over to my program chair, Irene Chan, and let's have a good time. Bye.
Thank you, Peggy. All right, good evening, everyone. I'm really glad to see everyone here tonight. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Irene Chan, as Peggy already mentioned, and I'm the program chair at the New York Book Forum. So for those of you that are not familiar with the New York Book Forum, we are a registered 501c3 nonprofit, and one of our primary goals is to be a bridge between the publishing world and the public, and to build and support the publishing community. We do this by organizing programs such as the one where you're sitting at tonight. So I want to thank you all for joining us and for purchasing a ticket to this event. And if you're not a member of the New York Book Forum already, I strongly urge you to consider joining or reestablishing your membership, because attendance and membership is what makes it possible for us to organize events like this. We love publishing, we love the literary community, and we love supporting it and holding events like this for all of us to connect. And our programming committee couldn't have done this without your attendance here and for your support, so thank you all. Our program tonight is titled Driven to Design, and we have 4 very talented and passionate designers to discuss what drives them in their designs. So it's my privilege to introduce our panelists tonight. Tonight we have with us Elizabeth Parisi, VP and Creative Director at Scholastic. Elizabeth heads up the trade fiction design team and has designed notable covers such as Sharon Cameron's The Light in Hidden Places and the Hunger Games series. We have Albert Tang, VP and Creative Director at Hachette Books. Albert has designed covers for the adult trade market, such as the Mambo Kings play Songs of Love by Oscar Hijuelos, and it's a great book, and Dirtbag Queen by Andy Corin. Also joining us is Taewon Yu, design manager at Odd Dot Press, a leading publisher of nonfiction books for the juvenile market. Tae has designed captivating covers for the antiquarian sticker book series, such as the covers for Bibliophilia and Imaginarium. And leading us in our conversation tonight is our moderator, Laura Levatino, interior designer at Simon & Schuster. Laura has designed interiors for books such as How to Be Dateable by, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't put the designs up here. How to Be Dateable by Julie Krafchick, and What Your Plants Are Saying to You. And so thank you, designers, for joining us tonight, and I'll hand it over to Laura.
We have 2. So yeah. Here, so you guys share these. I have my own.
I'll hold one. I'll distribute.
Oh, you have your own.
Oh,
Okay.
Us
okay.
too. And
That sounds
us
good.
too.
Mine.
Okay.
And
No.
Okay. Hi, everyone. A little about me, as Irene mentioned, I'm a designer of interiors at Simon & Schuster. I've been with the company for 15 years, since 2009, which was 2 years after I completed college with an illustration background and no clue what to do with it. I waited tables for a few years and drew little sandwiches on the chalkboard with the lunch specials while I tried to figure out what to do with my life. I was lucky enough to get hired as a part-time temp in the S&S Children's Department, which led to a position in adult production. A few years in, I realized design was probably a better fit for me. So I moved over to our desktop department, making text corrections, sending files to the printer, and eventually handling my own designs. I am now a designer for our Simon Element lifestyle imprint, and with a focus on 1 and 2 color books, some of which are highly designed. Sometimes I also design for the Scribner imprint, whose books are more classic and understated. One other thing about me is I am way out of my comfort zone right now. So if I say like, literally, or interesting too much, or if I completely forget what I'm saying in the middle of a sentence, you'll have to please forgive me. For the first question, I'm going to toss to all three of you. We'll start with you, Elizabeth. What drew you to publishing and book design in particular?
Okay. I guess I do need this. So I graduated from Rhode Island School of Design with a major in illustration. Like you, I had an illustration background. But I never had, so it fit my personality to go to art school. I love visual storytelling. I love editorial illustration. I also like writing and reading. And so I went to RISD, but never found a medium that I loved. My ideas were really good, and back then I'm old enough to have needed a medium because a computer wasn't even an option. It's like, do you like oils or pastels? Or I never found a medium, but my ideas were good. And I had a teacher there who mentioned the word art director, which I really like the sound of a lot. And I fell into publishing. You know, I'm also a people pleaser, so I feel like that mixed with my art background gave me the perfect background for publishing. And when I started in publishing, I was able to work with illustrators, knowing the language, matching that with my love of books and reading and words, and my people pleasing, and having to please a lot of parties, which I don't know if that will come up, but in terms of approvals in publishing, we all know that it's really lengthy. So I fell into the job, and it was the perfect place for me to be.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
How about you, Tay?
Yes. Hi, my name is Taewon Yu. I work here, downstairs, in fact, at Oddbat. So I came to publishing through music. I'm an old punk rocker. Played in bands, and basically I did graphics for album covers and posters and merchandise, etc. And from there went to fashion, and basically arriving at publishing was a matter of like just making a living in New York. But it was a place where the tactile and the intellectual and the conceptual all kind of married together. And of course, you know, to be part of the, you know, basically the camaraderie of the tradition of making books and being in publishing is, I consider an honor. And there's so many things I've been able to experience and learn from here. So yeah, so it's in a way, I would prefer not to have a job, but if I had to have a job, this is a pretty great place to be working. Oh,
Hi, I'm Albert Tang. I was supposed to be a lawyer. That's what I told my parents when I went to school, and they paid for it. But after I graduated, I was a graphic designer, while they told all my relatives that they had a lawyer's son, but they didn't. And I fell into design. I always wanted to be a designer. I wanted to be an illustrator, but you know, in school, I found out everyone was so much better than me. So I took the easy course and I went to graphic design. But junior year, they were saying, hey, everyone needs an internship. And I fell into Penguin Books. I interned there for 2 years, and I just was never able to leave. 20-something years later, I'm still in books. So to say it was an accident, it was, but it was a happy accident because I think I'm in love with books and I'm a reader. And, you know, immigrant parents, it's hard for me to describe what my job was, but my first book cover, I took them to Barnes & Noble. Yes, Barnes & Noble existed back then. And I was like, here's what I do. And they understood at that moment. So from that moment on, like, it was books for me.
Yeah, but Andrew, actually, I do want to add that, like, also coming from an immigrant background, I feel that to be involved in the production of books and making and designing books, that already has such a cachet, because like books equal whatever intellect, you know, et cetera. And I felt that for me personally, like to be in the book making industry, it definitely was a plus. You know, a check plus on my mom's list.
As long as I wasn't in Times Square, like drawing people. I think it was like,
I think, yeah, I think that's when I went to art school and I said I wanted to be an artist. I think that's their nightmarish visuals.
Well, since you're all saying that, and I didn't want to be the cheerleader, I thought you guys were too cool for school, but clearly we all love this job. And I was going to say, I love my job. And I think that as creative directors, you really have like the best position because it's challenging, but it's always creative. And I've loved my job every day for 30 plus years. Feel very fortunate about it. So anyway.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Hey, what does your process look like from the start of a project?
Well, if it's not a project that I've generated myself, it's generally a lot of homework. I do a lot of research, and there's a long length of time when I'm not designing at all. But I think it's very important to understand sort of like what the book is trying to communicate, and also doing other research like what the intended audience are and how they are communicating and what they're expecting. All of these things are relevant information that that sort of like needs to be circulating in a designer, for me personally, because most of the best ideas come from accidents and the unconscious, but you kind of like also need to marry it with the information that we have that is actually relevant. So I do a lot of research. I really try to get it, understand it from the inside out, and also kind of like think about it conceptually. Like just trying to imagine the book. Also, the other thing I want to mention is like dealing with the dummies. Basically, I take a holistic attitude, like holding the dummy, just like imagining what it will feel like and look like and how it will be kind of communicated in a real life way. So that's my basic thing. And then just gathering all the materials and then kind of finessing it and just kind of like, I guess like driving it towards a, trial and error afterwards. Yeah.
How deep, Elizabeth, into the plot of a book do you usually go before you begin designing?
Yes. I like to read the manuscript in full, especially for why. I mean, I do YA in middle grade. I have a team of 6 designers along with me, and they have slightly different ways of doing it. But I like to read the book in full and come to my first meeting with my editor with ideas in my head, with illustrators, perhaps. I might comp something up. But we do have an initial conversation where I hear what their goals are. And so I just like to be ready with my own ideas. And then we kind of banter back and forth and work out what works. That they answered the question.
Yeah, that sort of answers my question. I
have to look at my own notes, remember what I said.
My follow-up question is, are you given a sense of what the book's visual vibe is going to be, or are you responsible for creating that vibe? And you kind of answered that.
Yeah, but I do think what's nice is that our editors really look to the designers to dictate and decide what the vibe's going to be. I mean, there's a content vibe, but in terms of what the art's going to be, they leave it up to us. They don't say, I'd like this to be this kind of illustrator and I want it to be this kind of design. So we have a lot of freedom to do that, which is really great.
Can I add to that, Elizabeth? You're saying you work in young adult. I'm asking questions now. I work in adult. I feel like a lot of my editors and a lot of my publishers feel like they're tastemakers themselves. So as much as they're like, make it look like this and do your own thing, down the line, it's always like a genre based. Like I want this book to look like something that has also been wildly successful. And my comeback to that, right, is like, yes, I can make it look like that right now, but a year and a half from now, when the book actually gets published, because when we design a book, it doesn't come out for like another year or two. By the time that happens, like then it becomes one of many versus a new object. So when you're mentioning that they were asking you for your expertise and your taste, I was actually really jealous of that.
Well, it happens a lot, but they do, there's some projects we get a cover info sheet and they say what the synopsis is and they say what the comp titles are. And there's a bit of a pitch, like this meets this. And so we do get some dictation of what they want, but there is at least this kind of moment of creativity where we're all sharing ideas, which I think is pretty healthy and helpful.
Okay, Albert, are your assignments usually of one particular genre or many?
I work at Grand Central Publishing, so we publish about 400 books a year. It's fiction and nonfiction, so there's no particular genre that I do. I do anything that I'm inspired by. I have a team of 10 designers. I'm nice and I let them choose their work first, and then I get the leftovers. I think you guys understand that, because it's the hard ones that kind of need my attention. Like the cool ones, everyone wants to design those, and it's easier to design the cool ones. And I design the hard ones, like celebrity memoirs, where it's like so personality driven. It's whatever they want, and I go to photo shoots, the fun stuff. But in general, I do like fiction. I gravitate towards fiction because, it's a fantasy world. If I have enough to read, I'd have a really great, design concept. But generally, we get about like 60 pages, and then we're supposed to design from that. But to answer your question, I don't have like a particular genre that I work in. What I like to work in is fiction, but I'm all over the board. Yeah.
Oh, about genres. Let's see about genres. Well, yeah. One thing I've noticed is that in the arc of a career, I think when you're a junior and you're starting out, it's obviously it's really helpful. You're learning, but you're also it's very helpful to be resilient and adaptable. So in a way, you're it's your advantage, and you don't really have a choice in the matter sometimes, that you really have to jump around and get good and try to understand the communication, the language, the visual language that's required for each all sorts of books. But as you achieve and have some seniority, you have a track record of what you end up being good at, and sometimes you get associated with a successful title. And so in some ways, like there's a little bit more of a expectation as longer that you're in the industry, that you're you're sometimes given the choice, sometimes you're just kind of relegated to doing like a couple of books. Like for myself, I do essentially the antiquarian sticker book series, and we're working on one right now after 3 volumes of it previously, and I do Eric Carle. So those are the 2 genres, the 2 styles that I do, and that's partly because it takes a long time to do these books, and also like at a certain point, it's like I realize that these are the books that I'm very good at and that I'm very happy doing.
Yeah.
So I think as for creative directors and art directors, if they're sensitive to these things, then they kind of like they allow the senior designers to work around what they're really good at.
Yeah. I was just going to add to that a little bit more. I definitely mix the genres. I want all the designers to be able to do a fantasy, to be able to do nonfiction, to be able to do something dystopian. So we mix it up in that way. I definitely, I look to see what their wheelhouse is and what their aesthetic is and try to match that. But we still want it to get it mixed up. And like others, if somebody does an author's work and then that author has another book, it'll go back to the same designer. So when we have our first presentation with the editors and they tell us the stories, I have my designers all listen intently, and then they are supposed to send me their list of 5 to 7 of their top choices in order of all the books they heard about. And I then try to give them at least 2 to 3 of their top 4 choices. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes they all want the same cool books. And you have to just, then you just kind of break it down. But I'm always really touched at how quickly they send me that list. They're so excited after the meeting. And then I kind of color code all their choices and go back and forth. And it's a little, it gets tricky. Like, oh, I think this person might not be as good at this one, even though it's their number 1. And I have to kind of strategize and assign it. But at least everybody feels very motivated and into the projects that they're getting. Anyway, so it's kind of a fun process.
Yeah, when they don't email you, you're like, oh man, this list is not great.
Yeah, you're sort of like playing matchmaker.
Yeah, and like you, I definitely I give the good ones to my star people. I'm growing all these designers. They're all amazing. I wish I had them here. They're superstars. And so there's some great YA. I'm not going to keep that one as much as I love it. I probably would give it to the designer who I know is just going to run with it. And it's my job to grow them. So, yeah.
So sort of a follow-up question there is, do you have a style or a personal aesthetic you like to stick to in your designs, or do you experiment with different styles? Kind of covered that already, but
Yeah,
how about you,
yeah.
Jay? Albert?
I kind of like retro design, so like I always gravitate to like gradients and noise and filters like that. So I like going to that that I like to do. But in general, designers should be very adaptable. Like Tay was saying, like you just don't want to be like pigeonholed into one design. You're constantly gonna get the same work, and then you're also really gonna get burnt out. So I tell my designers a lot that like I know that they work for me, but I really work for them. Like if they see that I'm not building their portfolio, if they see that I'm just giving them one type of genre to work on, and everything they're doing, they're just doing with their eyes closed. I'm not the boss for them. I don't want them to leave, for instance, but you sort of have to find someone that's going to champion your work and champion your talent. And sometimes as creative directors, we fall into the habit of like getting the job done. That sometimes we do lose sight of like inspiring each designer to do great work, right? Sometimes we have deadlines, we have sales conference, we need to get a cover out to retailers. But anything, I think everyone here knows that we have to inspire the designers to kind of do great work, and inspiring them is trying to keeping them off balance. So sometimes it's fiction, sometimes it's, commercial fiction, sometimes it's nonfiction, but just to keep them like on unsteady ground to kind of grow them as a talent.
So we all agree that it's good to be flexible, to challenge our you wouldn't call them employees, your team.
Our team.
Yeah. Okay. When trying to create a successful interior design, we take into account many things. Obviously, the setting and mood of the book, visual readability, intended page count, and we try to ensure the interior is cohesive with the cover. What are the components of a successful cover design, in your opinion? I have some examples, might include composition, color, contrast, special effects, typography pairings. I don't want to take away that.
That's all it is. No, with all those things that you've listed, I guess I had to think about like, well, how else do we think about this?
Yeah.
To me, it's kind of like clarity of image, and I do the squint test. And I often say to people, I mean, designers looking over their shoulders, like, well, if you squint at the cover, does it stay? Like, can you still see what's happening on that illustration? Is this arm like kind of mushing with the rest of it? Does that work? So I do the squint test all the time. Does the typography still read? Can you decipher what's on this cover? It's the same as shrinking down or enlarging. Does it stay?
I do the step back away from your
exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, there's also, when I was in art school, I used to flip things in the mirror to look at them, which is really shocking and sometimes. So I would say clarity of image, and does your cover evoke a mood? Does it take you somewhere? And I feel like I had one more. What was it? Oh, and I do, in terms of typography, just well-matched typography with art is crucial.
Which is an art in and of itself.
It is, and type that's kind of involved with the art is always kind of cool when it interplays. It's not just floating on top, but it's kind of combined.
Oh, yeah, for me, well, aesthetically, I would say a successful design, especially a cover design, sort of signals a consciousness or an intelligence beneath the surface. So basically, and I think that this is like just a version of what you're saying, but I'm much more concerned. I mean, obviously the composition and the balance of contrast and things like that, all those things are important. But I think one thing that that's harder to pinpoint, but it's that it's there, is when a cover is literally kind of like speaking to you, and then there is a sort of something happening to the viewer's brains, saying, "Oh, I get it." Oh, or asking questions like, "What is this? What is this promising me?" It's like because to me, each book, and especially a well-designed cover, actually is a sort of like has a personality of of a person even. It actually has a positioning. I mean, is it aloof and distanced? And kind of something aspirational that maybe we want to get to know, but maybe we're not cool enough yet. Maybe a book is really open and accessible and kind of hippie, and just like everyone come on in, like crash over here. Like to me, it has this type of kind of personality that is like a good design. Is actually there's that kind of living
There's a soul.
living soul underneath it. I mean, and if especially if there is one that is not easily readable, and especially something that is actually brings the viewer in, but isn't really sure what what it is really about, or surprises like 2-3 steps down the line, that's a successful design, because it actually is, you're actually interacting, and the opposite of that is like a lazy design where it says, oh, I get this, I know what this is, and I think this is very important, especially in our environment where we're living in an age of basically attention deficit syndrome, right? We're like overwhelmed by data, information, things to look at, things to buy, things to tempt us. Maybe this is the thing that will change my life, etc. That's happening to us multiple times in a day, hundreds of times.
For sure.
And so in that environment, which is to me generally like a disposable attention that we regret wasting at the end of the day. To have something, and this could be anything, it could be a video or a book cover, but to have actually a book cover that is actually worth your time and that you actually want to know more about, and you're actually engaging something in the individual, I mean, that's a successful book.
Great answer. Thank you. Let's see, let's move on to, what are some covers you've designed that are special to you, either for their success or for your own pride at having worked on them? Elizabeth.
Oh, yeah, start with me. Okay, well, it's hand down. It's Hunger Games. If you had another hour, I could tell you the longer story, but the shorter story is, it took so long to get that first cover approved because everybody knew this was something special. Everybody in-house who read the manuscript knew that this was a unique thing that had never been done before. And so everybody had their own opinion of what was going to make the cover work. And I went to countless approval meetings, getting close often, like almost getting the party, all parties to like something. And then sure enough, someone would go, but I don't think this does it. So we went through, I first assigned it to another art director. They worked on it for a long time. And then kind of just fatigued out. And then I passed it to someone else and they commissioned 1 or 2 artists. The other guy had commissioned an artist. And then I finally just took it on myself. I mean, they were working for me and I thought they'll do this, and it just kept not happening. And everyone's getting frustrated. So I took it on. And I too worked on with another illustrator or 2. I did many comps at that point. And so the reason I was proud of it, it wasn't just that it was a big book, but talk about a people pleaser. I was working on overtime and I was determined, and my refrain to myself was, what haven't I thought of? What haven't I thought of? Because there's 1,000 solutions for every cover. And people fall in love with the designs that they do. And I always want to say, just give it up and start another one. People get so attached to what they do, but you just have to keep trying. So that was my challenge. And then very quickly, I somehow got onto an idea, and I'm married to an illustrator who did the drawing of the Mockingjay on a napkin in a restaurant when I was talking about how frustrated we were. And I kind of realized where that could go and how it could work. And it was the only time I took that comp to the cover meeting, and everybody said yes. Like it was a final, it just all came together. And so it was personal because my husband, Tim O'Brien, did all the covers, and it was me because I worked my ass off to get that book approved. Met a lot of illustrators, worked with a lot of people. Anyway, it was just like, it was an amazing, exhausting, but amazing experience. And once we did #1, we almost already knew what the others were going to be. We knew the color schemes. We kind of plotted them out. And then recently I started working on the illustrated edition, which is, anyway, so I'm definitely most proud of the Hunger Games.
What a compelling answer.
Yeah, it was
great story. How about you, Tay?
Anybody else?
Oh, no, do that.
Whomever.
I generally like designing for with books where the authors are deceased. It's just one less level of approval that's needed. And so the Oscar Huelos cover that was up before was called Mambo Kings. And so Oscar has passed away. And so I thought, oh man, it's gonna be amazing. Little did I know that he had a widow. So that cover I love the cover. It turned out great. The reason why I love it was because it took so long. The widow was opinionated, which is fine. That's not the problem. But there's 10 of those covers. So to have a series look, which, I love designing series looks, because you get kind of have like a package that looks cohesive. So it's rounds of gradient backgrounds and, just different typefaces. So it was fun, but I swear to you, I had emails from this lovely woman at 2 or 3 in the morning. And it turned out great.
I bought that book because of the cover.
Nice.
It's beautiful.
I don't get any of that money, but thank you.
Great job. Anything you want to add, Tay?
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, for me, I guess it's the Antiquarian Stick Book series, and primarily because I really just pushed the boundaries of like what's possible with like foil and the intricacies of basically it's like breaking the soul of production people. We went through a few, yeah, but we got it done, and to actually work really hard and yeah, and just like, and to have all that time pay off in the end is incredibly satisfying. And then, yeah, and when I did album covers, I did some work for band Built to Spill, and that's a situation where I was just in love with the music, and so that's like a partnership that I really really treasure. So yeah,
Very impressed. Go ahead.
One more, sorry.
Yep.
Green has to be
Pick this
green.
guy.
Sorry. My other favorite cover was I designed a memoir for Kevin Hart. And the reason why I love this because we had a photo shoot, and the idea was to have puppies on his head. So that photo shoot was just dogs everywhere.
Nice.
And he just finding the perfect moment where a particular dog was on top of his head and his arms. After that, we figured out we just photoshopped them in. But at the shoot, we'd had like at least 50 puppies at the shoot, so that was great.
But it's very important to have the 50 puppies in order to get the mood correctly. Yeah.
That must have been fun. Wow. Okay, let's see. So I find myself constantly designing in life, from how I plan my days and weeks to gardening to even how I arrange my fridge contents. What are some ways design is present in your day-to-day outside of your job as a cover designer? I guess just asking, what do you do outside of work?
I love the question. It was really funny. Yeah, I think to me, design is about process, and I love process.
Mm-hmm.
Oops, this one's going out.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Here you go.
Here, I can hold
I
it.
love hand-eye coordination process of any kind because I am a crafty person. And so as you say, everything I do, it's design in that I'm how is the best way to do this? So it could be like, how's the best way to set up the files of this InDesign? How do I organize my layers in Photoshop? But then it can be like, how do I best chop this white onion into little pieces in an economical, clean, efficient way? How do I make this bed? How do I paint trim in my room? And I know I'm doing it the best way you can, of course. So yeah, everything is about design. I do make jewelry, so that's, I'm wearing something. So I have like not hustles. I'm not doing anything with it, but I do love design and process and anything in between.
Yeah, it sort of permeates every part of your life, right?
I had David Saylor gave me a t-shirt once that said, design is a good idea. And it's like doing things right. somehow is what
Mhm.
design is all about.
Mhm.
I'm going to talk about privilege a little bit. Like, I think we are privileged that our hobby is our job. So outside of my job, I am not a designer. First of
Interesting.
all, my wife doesn't let me. Anything in the house more than designing. She's a pharmacist. So like, what does she know about design, right? I'm an art director, creative director, but I don't get to choose like the floor. So at home or outside of my life, I think I leave that kind of thinking alone. The creative stuff I leave at work, and then at home I'm like slob. And I just go about life kind of like instinctually, whereas design, it feels like there's a lot more concept, which Elizabeth was pointing out, like there's a lot of thought. And I think I leave that creative energy at work.
Yeah.
Again, it's a privilege to go to work. And, a lot of my friends are lawyers, and they're like, I hate my job. And they're like, it must be nice going to work and playing with art. I was like, yeah, it is. And so that's my answer.
Yeah, all the same. I think it's I'm very process oriented, and I think something that I learned from design that I have really applied to all aspects of my life is really sort of something about the elegant execution of a well thought out idea.
Mhm.
Sort of like knowing where you are now, and then also being able to be honest and I guess honest and paying enough attention so that you could actually, with relative accuracy, know how things will end up. So it's like anticipating the endpoint of the process. So like where you are and where you end up, and how to basically travel
Mhm.
that line with with balance and elegance and enough time, etc. So in that sense, it kind of it informs just my my kind of like the interior life, and I think part of it is like just like take time, like do not rush, like take time to prepare everything, know where it's, and then basically, and then just like design is just like gathering things, information, parts, assets, whatever,
Yeah.
and kind of bringing it all together in this balanced format. So that could apply to cooking,
Sure.
conversations, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And designing is a lot about hoarding as well. Like we're always hoarding like little pieces of like art you see, like when I'm on like
you never know.
on Flickr, on Pinterest, I'm like always pinning stuff. So like back to my original point, I don't really do art outside of work, but I think that's what I also do. Like I'm like constantly looking at something, and like something is triggering in my mind that one day I'll use something that I've seen at work. Yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, we're crazy hoarders.
I would agree with that. My Pinterest defines me. Same thing. You go, you just collect things that are inspiring to you, and then you refer to them to get ideas. And yeah, it's lovely.
I was going to add one more silly, it's kind of a silly thing, but the only way I don't feel like I'm designy is in my house,
Okay.
because I love things and I love old things, and our house is very comfortable, but it's filled with hand-me-down furniture.
That's
and,
designy,
you know what I
though.
mean?
Yeah,
So I
it's how you
wouldn't
put that
post it on
stuff together.
Instagram, and it's not like high design. It's just really comfortable and kind of cluttered, and because it's just filled with all the things that I love. And it's just interesting when you see how far people take it, the design
I
aspect.
think that is design too, though. It's like taking the things that you already have and supplementing them with complementary pieces and making something out of that.
True.
Yeah. Okay. So speaking for most designers, okay, this is the last one. So, well, actually, the closing question is probably more important. So, yeah. Okay. So speaking for most designers, we cringe when we see the papyrus font in use or poor old Comic Sans. Another thing that makes me personally cringe is when I see lowercase type tracked out too much. Drives me crazy. It's just a personal peeve. So I'm wondering if you wanted to share any design grievances you might have.
We're all chomping at the bit here.
Let's hear it.
Okay. First, I love the question. First and foremost, my pet peeve is tangents. So, example, person standing on a beach with the horizon line of the ocean behind them, but the ocean line is like right in line with the top of their head.
Yes.
You know, like you bring it down, you make the head pop over the horizon line. So tangents, I'm always pointing them out
That's a great
to
answer.
people at work. I had a young designer working on a World War II book. There's a tank in the background. The gun is pointing at what it looks like it's pointing into the nose of a horse in the foreground. And they didn't see it. I kept saying, we have to move that gun because it looks like it's going to. So that was one. And wait a minute. And then in terms of fonts, I had one thing to say. It's true that, like for me, Optima, because when I started out, everyone used Optima as the sans serif. I would never use Optima now, or Califonts, the kind of medieval fonts that came out when I was a young designer, and everyone, if it sniffed of being medieval or old timey, they would use a Califont. And recently, I had a designer using Optima on an author's name and a Califont on a fabulous New York Times bestselling author's book that's coming out soon. She got a Califont on there that looks archaic. And I shut up because even though I wanted to say, oh, don't use Optima. Oh my God. It's my reference from my time. It has not, and these kids aren't picking these things ironically. They think they're cool. And so I just zip my lip because it's not for me to say anymore. Anyway, those are mine.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great point, because I think the answer to your question, for every single pet peeve that I've had, I've been proven wrong, because generally speaking, I have an open mind, and I also have strong prejudices. So it's like the prejudices is the immediate reaction.
Right.
But within time, if you actually give it some thought, like it's not really the, it's not the trope. It's really the execution and the whole concept behind it. And my own general pet peeve is, I think with any industry, and I think it's in publishing, there's a tendency to lean towards repeating past successes. So therefore, certain tropes and certain things, certain stylistic, reflexes gets repeated, and they sort of can't really tell, they're all the same after a while. So and I understand why that is the case, but unfortunately, it's sort of ends up becoming, sort of like a lot of visual pollution that you can't really, you need to suss out, which is actually the good one, because they all kind of look the same. So that's a unfortunate, reality of any industry, I think. The font that I like, or the font I hate? None. I love them all.
Yeah, I love them all too. Because I just don't know what font it is. I can't even hate it.
I'm also I love the underdog, like Comic Sans. There's nothing, it's
It's Hootie and the Blowfish.
Hootie and the Blowfish in Comic Sans. It'll be a great designer who makes that
Right.
Who makes that
Right. It's
alive.
just a challenge, right?
Absolutely.
To make it look good.
It's weird, but I don't like drop shadows. I just don't like it. Yeah. I also don't like thin serifs, because when they get shrunken in thumbnails, it's impossible to see it. I shouldn't say this because it's recorded, but I work in commercial fiction. So it's so much of the Running Man and the back of a woman's head.
True.
And it sells, and I have to do it once in a while, but oh my God, it's one of the things I hate, but I do.
Have you all seen the video of the historical novels, back of the head? Yeah. And they show clip after clip of it. And I do those a lot. So I just was guffawing. I was laughing so hard. I felt so exposed. I was going to say something else, but I forgot. Okay.
Okay, final question is, if you had to name one quality that you prioritize when interviewing for new designers, what would that be?
I'll
It
quickly
could be
do
a
it,
couple.
just because I've finished interviewing a bunch of people, so it's in my head. I like it when they're crazy designers, like it's easier for me to pull someone back than for me to push a conservative designer that knows what I want to see. Cause I think that's where I am like, oh, I've seen this before. But if someone is like doing things I've never seen before, like those are the people that I kind of like want to hire.
Yeah.
It's easy to get them to conform versus getting someone to like break the rules. So if that's like something, if you're a student here and you're like, maybe I should show them stuff that, you know, their portfolio looks like. I don't want to see things I could do myself. Like I want to see things that I have no idea how to do. So go wild, go crazy. Just know that, you know, if you're designing a book cover, like it's like someone like Stephen King, don't make their name 10 points. Like we're buying Stephen King. Right.
Oh, well, for me, well, gee, I can't think of just one, but I think one of the main important thing, I don't know if you could actually suss this out in an interview, but one quality and one skill that is really useful is one of emotional intelligence and an ability to communicate without offending, being adept at negotiations, basically being able to explain oneself, and also to listen and basically, I mean, this is all about the realities of being a designer, which is kind of like working alone in your mind on one hand, but also working with a committee. And so being able to listen to your committee, but being able to be alone in your creativity, keeping that balance somehow. And if we're able to find somebody like that beforehand, actually, you know, before they get hired, that would be amazing. But I find that and related to that, it's also the kind of openness of mind to learn, and also to understand that it's not just like making things look pretty and good, but also being able to think conceptually in layers, that there's other means of communication that's happening that is not just types, you know, type design or illustrations or composition. There are other layers of communication that's at work. So being able to be aware of these things, I mean, you know, I find that to be like a pretty good candidate.
All right.
Yeah, I had trouble picking. So I had three. They're all kind of abstract: point of view, passion, and range. But those don't all have to be in one person. And so recently, I took a risk on a young designer who kind of switched majors very late in her schooling. So she basically had about 8 months of design training in the applications. And so I knew she was undereducated when it came to those things. But she had a lovely personality. She loved books and had a blog about all the books that she collected. And in her portfolio, which wasn't, you know, design-wise, it wasn't that strong, but she did these really cool Photoshop portraits of people, kind of half faces with trees coming out of the tops of their heads, but they were really skillfully done. And I just saw I saw that she had a thing, like she had something that she was kind of into and was developing very creative portraits. And she just won us over and we hired her. And sure enough, she's been doing a middle grade line of books where she's created the art herself, and they're very bold and graphic, and it's where she's excelled, because she's still learning the rest of the stuff. You know, I took her on knowing that I would have to have her train. She would have to get trained on the job, learn InDesign better, learn all that stuff better. But it was worth it. And for all the designers, I always say, no question is too stupid. You have to just ask the questions. And always.
Yeah, because designers are kind of dumb.
No, I wouldn't say that. But then I have other people who are just super, they come out of school and they know how to do illustration, and they do some hand lettering, and they kind of, they know InDesign fairly well, and they know graphic. And then you're like, okay, that's just range. And you've got it all. So, yeah.
Great answers. Thank you for your thoughtful answers to my
Great moderating.
Yeah, good
Thank
questions.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you, panelists. We'd like to open it up to Q&A from the audience. So if you have a question, raise your hand. I will bring the mic to you. I have one over here. Let me bring it over. If you can say your name before you ask.
Hi, I'm Hope. I work here at Macmillan in production. So my question is sort of like when you're coming up, well, kind of when do you think of specs like embossing and foil and stained edges and things like that? Like at what point, or even matte UV versus gloss or something? Like at what point in the process do those things come in? Or are they part of like the personality of the book, like you were saying? Or yeah, when do you decide on those? Or
My smart ass answer is, when do you tell me what the print run is? Right? Yeah, what mine's 50,000. That's a lot. Generally, I'm a matte and boss person. I don't think, yes, foil and special effects are a big deal, but if it needs it, you're asking the special effects to do too much work for you. But of course, special effects does a lot. Like if you go to the bookstore and you see something with foil and sparkles, these are people that are non-publishing. It means people spent money on this book and it's supposed to be a big deal. So those are the books that you should buy, because we spend a lot of money doing it. But yeah, it comes early in the process. If I know I'm going to use foil, I'm using like a fake yellow to simulate to my boss, hey, I'm going to be asking for money later. So it does come kind of early. But yeah, if a print run is under X amount, I don't even dare ask. You know?
Yeah, I had Ellie Berger once said, a cover should stand strong without any effects. If it's a good cover, you don't need the special effects. So that's yeah, we have a cutoff, like if it's 10,000 or less, you're not going to get anything basically. But we start designing, then there's a print and price after we're kind of concepting. So as we're building the cover, we're starting to think about what effects we'd love to get. Then it's a wish list where they price out top 3 choices. And in the end, mostly you get the cheapest choice. But certain titles, certain authors, you can fight for more, and then you get all excited because you're going to do a spec. And in these right now, I mean, printed books are just so important to make beautiful. We just really should be making them beautiful. My staff is dying to do stained edges, and we're finally finding vendors for that, right, Irene? So yeah, I don't know if we're answering your question.
I understand that they can't be shredded, right? That's
Stained ones?
Stained ones. Is that true? Metallic stained or?
Oh, they can't be rough fronts. That's what he's asking.
Oh,
They can't be rough fronts. They have to be
deckled.
smooth.
Deckled edges.
Ah. Oh, no, but actually also gilded versus staining, right? Gilded you cannot, right? That's right. Yeah. Just adding an unnecessarily extraneous point here.
I was just going to quickly say, in the old days, I designed 2 series, Dear America and Royal Diaries. You remember Dear America? Weren't those great? So good. So I designed those, and Royal Diaries had printed end papers. Dear America had a ribbon for a little while, and Royal Diaries had gilded edges, and I loved working on those books so much. That's all.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I don't have that much to add, but I think in my particular job, especially working on books that are for younger children and with lots of extra stuff happening. So we're kind of like thinking in terms of these things, and it's almost like a given that, like, what can we start with? And obviously it's like it starts very early. It's because it's part of the budgeting, right? So
thank you.
From Kelsey, who is our designer, actually.
One of them. Hello, I'm Kelsey. I work at Simon & Schuster as an ebook developer, picture books, which is very fun. My question is, what skill, what design skill have you developed over the course of your career that's come in use the most, that's been the most important for a lot of your designs?
Well, for me, I think patience is the main one. I think, like, when I was very young, I thought that things ought to be fast and fun and just like, just like, I don't know, just getting into it and like no room for downtime really. But I think that over understanding what is at stake and how many mistakes, just as human beings, that we kind of like lose sight of, or we're too tired, so et cetera, or we just like we make mistakes that we never expect that we would never make, but we will make them, and just like I think it's human nature. So I think what I've learned is that that's just reality. So therefore, anticipate it. Definitely make time to triple check the work, and even more time at the end stage to quadruple check, quintuple check the work, and just like really, I don't know, just like trust the process, but trust that you need to be mindful that there's lots of places where things could fall off, and in order to just like deliver it the way that you intended, you really need to be aware of our susceptibilities to dropping things, and also real understanding how much time it actually does take to finish something as it's intended.
If you mean like a design skill that I've developed over the years, or do you mean like, because to answer yes is patient and having tough skin, right? Because that's what if you're a designer, if you don't have tough skin, you're not a designer for too long. It just doesn't happen that way. But in terms of like if you meant like an actual like skill set that I'm using at work, like I felt like I was always good in Photoshop, but as I've gotten older, like I feel like I needed Photoshop even more. So if you guys are good at Photoshop, you guys are pretty set, and like you're in a good place. It just gets better and better, and you just need to do more and more. Your publisher is always going to want them a little bigger, a little bit smaller, the back of someone's face that doesn't even exist. So there's a lot of that like over the years I've getting better and better at Photoshop, like nonstop.
I've in working on covers with both my own and with designers, it's the ability to analyze that cover and figure out what's not working, like just having a really keen eye. And I have an example because I thought this just came up with a really young designer just out of school last year from SVA. She's an illustrator by training, and she was working on a cover where she had a keychain. It's very glossy, photographic, Photoshop built, with things hanging off of it on a gradated background. And she got attached to a typeface that was very hand-drawn sans serif that she hand drew and colored irregularly. And it was lovely. But I knew, I kept looking at the cover, and I knew that people were not going to like this cover, and they weren't going to know why. But it was because the type and the art didn't work well together. The type was too hand-drawn to the point where it was competing with the glossiness of this nice photo of a keychain. And she really was attached to that type. And so I finally had her, I said, can you just do one that's clean with more solid color and clean edges, and do it. And it turned out one, and I let her show the others too, and the one that was clean edged won. And it's hard in the moment, you can't say this is right and this is wrong. It's a perception, it's what she sees. But the ability to break down your cover, whatever you're working on, into puzzle pieces, and a group may reject a cover, and it was just that one little aspect, that one little puzzle piece, that if you had adjusted that, they probably would have went, oh yeah, this one looks good, but something went wrong. And so it's about kind of being able to analyze what you're working on, and making sure each part of it kind of gels.
Sometimes you leave the mistake there so that they pick the one you want. Like that's a little
If you're
trick.
lucky.
Right. That's a trick that I do. Like I know there's one that they're never gonna like. I never take it out because I know they're not. And then you're right. And they picked that one.
That's it.
Thank you.
I'm gonna be the bad guy because I feel like this conversation should keep going. But I think that we have to say. I think it's like it's on. Yeah, I think yeah.
Yeah, I think we're at time. This has been a wonderful event. Thank you so much for sharing your processes and also sharing all these things that you guys are diplomats, honestly. I have a whole new appreciation for that. I've been doing this I've been working with Elizabeth for a very long time. So thank you guys. Thank you all for coming to our event.